Warning, the following program was produced for traditional broadcast television. Over 12 minutes of commercials have been removed, but interruptions are still included. Thank you for watching.
A man who was once its biggest champion now says, yes, Bitcoin is in fact dead. His name is Jeffrey Tucker, and he just wrote a scathing piece in the Epoch Times. And while Tucker raises some legitimate concerns, no doubt about it, I believe he is jumping to the wrong conclusion and maybe jumping to that conclusion too fast. And so in this episode, we're going to break down his main arguments one by one, and I'm going to show you where I think he's right and where I think he's wrong, and why Bitcoin's biggest strengths are the very things he now sees as a weakness.
Government officials insist we will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Welcome to the Money Block with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused program that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
And welcome, America. Welcome, world. No matter where you're tuning in from, whether you're watching online television, we are coast to coast, syndicated on Biz TV. We are America's Bitcoin-focused TV and radio show. So if you are new to this and, if you want to call up a friend, tell them to tune in because we got a lot to cover today. A topic that is going to be relevant. A lot of people are questioning Bitcoin these days. But today I want to cover some of the doubts, some of the maybe even conspiracies of the failure of Bitcoin. But the truth is, a lot of people write about Bitcoin and its potential death because Bitcoin's died so many times, it's got its own website, the Bitcoin obituaries, right? But today I'm going to kind of, I'm going to talk about some of these things, and I'm going to address them head on and address maybe some of these doubts that you've heard, seen, or even thought yourself. And so this question today on this episode is Bitcoin dead? And I think a lot of us look at the price and can come to a conclusion, but a lot of us who've been in the space for a long time have a different conclusion. And, a man who was once its biggest champion now says, yes, Bitcoin is in fact dead. His name is Jeffrey Tucker, and he just wrote a scathing piece in the Epoch Times. The title of it was The Rise and Fall of Bitcoin. And after following the space for 16 years, he says that Bitcoin is down by half in the last year, lower than it was 5 years ago, and that the dream is officially over. Nada. Well, he says that these phrases like to the moon, that kind of talk, it's gone silent. The idea of hodling was terrible advice, and most of all, that Bitcoin has become one of the most powerful tools for government surveillance ever created. That instead of bringing freedom and it delivering it's brought complete abolition of financial privacy. That's his point. But coming from somebody who was once a believer in Bitcoin as strongly as I do, those are heavy words. And I read this article multiple times. And while Tucker raises some legitimate concerns, no doubt about it, I believe he is jumping to the wrong conclusion and maybe jumping to that conclusion too fast. He sees failure, and I see a technology that is still in its early chapters. It's still growing. It's still being adopted. It's evolving exactly the way that it needs to. And so in this episode, we're going to break down his main arguments one by one, and I'm going to show you where I think he's right and where I think he's wrong, and why Bitcoin's biggest strengths are the very things he now sees as a weakness. And this is going to be, like I said, a different kind of episode because I'm addressing some philosophical, maybe a little bit more technical, maybe more important than most, especially if you're invested in Bitcoin. So I want you to stay with me. We got a lot to cover. I don't want you to miss this. And a lot of us who've been in this space for an extended period of time have seen these kind of accusations come and go. People have written things, made videos about it, and high influential individuals have spoken badly about Bitcoin. But I don't think all hope is lost because it is a technology. It is evolving. And I think it would be too early to jump to conclusions that it's over, that the Bitcoin project and idea is no more. Again, there's bump in the roads. There's always bumps. but it's not done yet. It's not over. We'll be right back after this break. You're watching The Money Block. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned in to The Money Block, syndicated coast to coast on Biz TV, America's Bitcoin-focused TV and radio show, bringing you topics that matter. So if you are new to this space, maybe you're a lover of Bitcoin, maybe you're even an expert in Bitcoin, well, hopefully you'll walk away with something new with this program, learned a little bit of something new. And today we're going to be addressing a topic and some ideas. This idea that Bitcoin might be dead. This is the original idea of Bitcoin. Is it over? And like I said, people have written obituaries for Bitcoin ever since its existence. Bitcoin has died. I can't keep track of how many times. In fact, they have a whole website dedicated to it. But today, we're going to be addressing an article that was written by a guy that I've watched and learned from. He's a writer, and he's an Austrian school of economic thinker as well, Jeffrey Tucker. But I think everybody has a right to say whether Bitcoin has failed or whether it's still growing and succeeding. And that's why we love having this show. We love doing these debates, having these conversations. And today I want to cover a piece, like I said, that Jeffrey Tucker has published. And Jeffrey Tucker, it's a pointed opinion piece that he wrote on June 10th in the Epoch Times, titled "The Rise and Fall of Bitcoin." And like I said, Tucker has followed this space closely for 16 years. And he started as a skeptic, became a true believer in 2013, and now says he has reached the point where he has to wash his hands of Bitcoin. And he begins with the numbers. Bitcoin, he notes, is down by half year over year and is actually lower than it was 5 years ago. The enthusiastic to the moon talk that once filled the internet has gone quiet, and the old HODL mantra, that misspelled rallying cry from early forums telling people to hold on no matter what, has turned out, in his mind, to be very bad financial advice. And for Tucker, this isn't about price charts, just to be fair. To him, it's about something deeper. He writes that it pains him to even say this. And so I think he doesn't like to write this, but for years he's cheered on Bitcoin, the way that you would root on a son who keeps falling short on his grades. And you offer encouragement, you give advice, but eventually you say, hey, I got to face reality. I got to face the music. And it seems that's what he's done. And the reality is, as he sees it, it is a project which has, it was supposed to bring wealth and freedom and has instead brought the opposite. It's become one of the most powerful tools for mass financial surveillance that the world has ever seen. That's in his own words. Something that you would have been, this would have been unimaginable just a short time ago as far as these ideas of Bitcoin being this. He is careful not to dismiss the underlying technology entirely, and there are other ways, he says, that you can use blockchain and tokenization that might still be consistent with his original dream. But Bitcoin itself, he argues, was slowly and relentlessly twisted into the opposite of what it was founded to be. So what was that original vision? And, Tucker takes us all the way back to 2013 when he first became an owner of Bitcoin and began experimenting with peer-to-peer transactions, no name attached, no bank in the middle, and no mediating institution, just pure monetary trade between individuals and a stateless money. This matters. And he explains in his article that it's because for thousands of years, governments have controlled the money supply, and they like to seize control. It's always been their top priority of any regime. And the economist F.A. Hayek imagined something different back in 1976, a system that could be run entirely outside government oversight, and Bitcoin seemed to have solved the technical problems that had doomed earlier attempts at private money. And it wasn't easily hacked. It ran on a public blockchain ledger that no single company controlled. Double key cryptography kept transactions secure. And the hard cap on new coins meant that supply couldn't be inflated away like we see with dollars today. Tucker even wrote his first positive article celebrating the technology in February of 2013. But then he came to realize, hey, there's this major intervention going on. It was the first major intervention. And later, that same year in 2013, the Department of the Treasury issued a single-page directive stating that only approved exchanges could convert dollars into Bitcoin. Overnight, thousands of startup businesses were effectively criminalized because obtaining those approvals were far too expensive for most. And in Tucker's words, governments had seized control of the on and off ramps to the system with the clear goal of surveilling everything that moved through it. I could see his point on that, but still, he thought at the time, as long as you stayed inside the Bitcoin ecosystem itself, the network could continue to grow and compete with the government money, the government monetary system. But there was a critical problem built into the protocol. Early on, to prevent spam, the size of blocks that could be added to the ledger had been temporarily capped. For Bitcoin to scale and real-world use, those blocks would need to grow. Hence the block size wars that many of us are familiar with and who have studied Bitcoin. But by around 2015 and 2016, as more people and businesses began using it, a fierce controversy erupted inside the development community. Some very powerful people in charge of the underlying code, Tucker says in his article, decided that they did not want the block size to expand, they did not want to scale, and they did not want widespread merchant adoption. This, he argues, turned the entire reason for Bitcoin's existence on its head. But is it? Well, don't worry. We're going to go through these one by one. But in his article, he basically makes the point that the practical result was that the system slowed to a crawl, that transactions could take days to confirm because the blocks were too small for the demand. Fees became exorbitantly high, and it was more like a luxury good than everyday money. But, small blocks are important for the decentralized nature of Bitcoin. But let's continue. Meanwhile, the same voice is telling everyone, in his opinion, not to worry. They were also telling people not to sell because the price was headed to millions. Just keep holding. Keep hodling your Bitcoin. It's going to go to the moon. Tucker points out in his piece that price has always been unstable and repeatedly crashing by half and then recovering, doing it all over again, but never behaving like a reliable store of value for anything other than speculative or discretionary money. Well, we're in the evolution of something becoming money. I'll continue on later about that. But today, he says we are looking at a severely broken system that serves the causes of a state surveilling everybody and everything, the best in history. But here's why. If your wallet's public key is ever matched to even a single transaction, and courts can demand that information quite easily, they can, then every transaction you have ever made, going all the way back to 2009, can become visible to authorities or anyone else who can access that data. Chain analysis. We've heard that term before. Banks, on the other hand, typically keep records for 3 to 7 years at most. But Bitcoin's ledger is permanent. It lasts forever. It is, in Tucker's words, the absolute abolition of financial privacy. And he notes that while there are privacy-focused coins and faster alternatives, many of them are not permitted on regulated platforms, those on and off ramps he was talking about. Tucker closes his piece by pointing to a blueprint from the Bank of International Settlements that describes using blockchain technology to tokenize not just money, but all existing property, a complete financial architecture for the rest of the 21st century. And he finds this remarkable, and he uses it to drive home his larger argument, which governments have an enormous appetite to control our money and our lives. Promises of technological utopia often go wrong when you read the fine print. I would agree with him on that in many ways. But above all, he writes that freedom cannot come from a technical change alone. It only happens when a population makes a broad commitment to an ideal and shows a willingness to stand up and fight for it. There is no magic invention that can substitute for that. And these are the central claims of Jeffrey Tucker that he's made in this recent piece. And I don't disagree with a lot of them, but I'm going to explain why I think he's got the wrong conclusion. He's not saying that the technology has no value. He is saying that Bitcoin, as it has actually developed, has failed to deliver on its founding promises and has instead become a powerful instrument of surveillance and control. In the segments ahead, we're going to examine these arguments directly. We're going to take them head on, and we'll look at what Bitcoin was actually designed to do from the very beginning and what Satoshi Nakamoto himself wrote about privacy and scaling, and whether the choices that were made were really, was it a betrayal or the original vision, or whether they were necessary to preserve the properties that make Bitcoin uniquely valuable. We'll also consider what's actually happening in the ecosystem today beyond the base layer. Again, I think he brings up valid points, but I think he's making the wrong conclusions. And just like the internet has been great for decentralizing information, and yes, the internet has created an environment where information can be tracked and traced, and governments like that part of it, but there's parts of the internet that the government doesn't like. And it's all in how we use it, and it's all in how we develop it. And Bitcoin is going down some of the same paths and same methods that we've witnessed with the internet. And so is all hope lost? I don't think so. In fact, I think we need to make the point of, hey, Bitcoin's still evolving. So stick around, join us in the next segments. I'll explain to you why I still have hope. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in action with The Money Block, America's Bitcoin-focused TV and radio show. No matter where you're tuned in from, whether you're watching online or watching on TV, we want to welcome all you Bitcoin newbies, lovers, and experts. Today, it's been an interesting show. I've been addressing a topic. Is Bitcoin dead? Is it over? Is the original vision gone? And can it be reclaimed, or can it even survive? Is Bitcoin just this tool for massive surveillance? Well, I've been going through this article by Jeffrey Tucker from the Epoch Times, a guy that I've watched many times throughout the years, a good thinker, a good liberty-minded thinker. But like I said, Tucker has an opinion, and he's joining the Bitcoin Obituary Club, where he is declaring Bitcoin done, and he has to wash his hands from Bitcoin. And we're going to address some of these points head on and see if he's right or if he's wrong. We'll let you be the judge of it. But like I said, Jeffrey Tucker's strongest argument in his piece from the Epoch Times is the one that I think deserves the most serious attention. It's his claim that Bitcoin has become one of the most powerful tools for mass financial surveillance that the world has ever seen. Now, I agree that if you're a criminal using Bitcoin, you're dumb. But he's not wrong about the mechanics of Bitcoin and what's possible with surveillance. I mean, the Bitcoin ledger is public. Every transaction is announced to the entire network and recorded permanently. If your wallet address ever gets linked to your real-world identity, whether through a regulated exchange, a court order, address reuse, or even a single mistake, then in principle, every transaction you've ever made, going all the way back to 2009, can be traced. And it's this real and permanent feature of the system that Tucker points out, and he's right to flag it as something that should concern anyone who cares about financial privacy. But here's where his analysis, in my opinion, takes a critical turn, something that we all have to be aware of. And that public nature of the Bitcoin ledger isn't a bug that crept in later. It isn't something that was twisted by bad actors or captured developers. It was designed this way from the very beginning. And it was designed this way for a very, very specific reason. Like, I can't go down to the Federal Reserve and audit their books. Do we want that? Yeah. But to understand why we want to bring this point to light and why it was laid out, I'm going to bring an example from the podcast What Bitcoin Did. They had a guest on named Max Hilbrand, and he made a blunt but important observation about this. He calls Bitcoin's base layer a non-private design by architecture, and here's why. In order for the network to function without trusted third parties, every full node on the network must independently validate the entire history of every transaction that has ever occurred from everyone, anywhere, everywhere since 2009. And this is the opposite of privacy by design. To receive and verify that you actually own Bitcoin, you have to reveal the details of your transaction to the entire world so that the entire world can validate it and secure it. There is no way around that requirement if you want to use the base layer. No doubt about it. But this isn't a user error problem. It's a fundamental architectural limit. And Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, was quite clear about this from the very start. If we look at the white paper and some of his writings. In the original Bitcoin white paper, he wrote that transactions must be publicly announced so that the network can agree on a single history without a trusted party. There was never a promise of strong privacy at the base layer to begin with. You know, we need a system that we can trust. That's the whole point. But he also wrote something that, is very important to consider, something that a lot of people in the Bitcoin space continue to develop and talk about, which is this whole layered approach. But let's look at his writings. Satoshi says, the necessity to announce all transactions publicly, and this precludes the method, but privacy can still be maintained. This idea of privacy, it can be maintained by breaking the flow of information in another place, by keeping also your public keys anonymous. So in other words, Satoshi anticipated that while this base layer would be transparent, trusted, privacy solutions would need to exist outside the base protocol itself. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in understanding how Bitcoin was actually meant and was developed, which is this layered approach, right? We've witnessed it with the internet. I mean, think about how the internet was even built. The base protocol, TCP/IP, was kept deliberately simple, open, and transparent. It wasn't designed to do everything, and instead, higher layers were built on top of it over time, right? HTTP for web pages, SSL for encryption, applications for specific uses, without ever having to change or compromise that base layer. It's not a bad design. But Bitcoin is following that same engineering logic. The base layer's job is to be the most secure, verifiable, trusted, and unchangeable settlement layer possible. This requires it to be slow, conservative, and fully transparent. Trying to make the base layer fast, cheap, and strongly private at the same time would almost certainly weaken its security and auditability. That's not speculation. That's just basic system designs. I want a system I can audit. We can't audit the Federal Reserve right now, but it's a free market solution. Grassroots going up, right? So instead of trying to force everything onto layer one, the Bitcoin ecosystem has been building in higher layers. For example, we've seen the development of things like the Lightning Network, which already handles millions of fast, low-cost transactions off-chain every day with improving privacy features as we go along. Emerging approaches like client-side validation and zero-knowledge proofs are being developed to make this even more like the activity and data on the public ledger, off the public ledger. We're going to keep Bitcoin's security, right? But the data off the public chain is going to be a part of that. These solutions allow the receiver to validate only what's relevant to them, and rather than forcing every node to validate everything. This isn't Bitcoin's failing to live up to its original vision. This is the original vision playing out. Like I said, we're building in layers, right? Tucker is correct. I will say Tucker's correct that on-chain Bitcoin by itself does not deliver strong privacy or everyday usability, but he draws the wrong conclusion, in my opinion. He sees a project that has been corrupted. What I see is a project that is maturing exactly the way resilient systems mature, by protecting the integrity of the foundation while building new capabilities on top. In the next segment, we're going to look at several other key arguments Tucker makes, including whether Bitcoin has actually succeeded as a store of value and what its real role is in the broader evolution of money, and why the many changes it has, or challenges that it has faced, have ultimately made the network stronger rather than weaker. Again, anti-fragile, right? But if you're new to this concept of sound money, decentralized money, freedom associated to money, how it's important to monetary sovereignty, I would encourage you, download my book, Foundations for Liberty. You're going to see a QR code right there. You can scan it. It's a journey. It's a learning process. This whole idea of technology and monetary policy, and there's so many elements that go into Bitcoin that you almost have to educate yourself and be an expert. Not quite an expert, but just knowledgeable in multiple different areas to understand how this is growing, what's evolving. And so I don't think Bitcoin's original mission and vision is compromised per se. I think it's going through some bumps in the road. But this is not the end. Bitcoin is still evolving. It's still growing. It's still this tool that has yet to mature. And so as we go on, I'm going to continue to break down Tucker's arguments. I'm going to share my viewpoint, why this isn't over yet, and why I still have hope for Bitcoin. All right, guys, we'll see you right after this break. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned in to the Money Block, syndicated coast to coast on Biz TV. And I just want to welcome all you Bitcoin newbies, lovers, and experts. This is America's Bitcoin-focused TV and radio show. And whether you're watching online or on TV, call up a friend, tell them to watch, or comment, like, subscribe, be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think about today's topic, because we're talking about this idea of, is Bitcoin dead? Has another obituary been added to the Bitcoin obituary website? Is the original vision over? Well, I'm addressing some of the concerns, some of the arguments head on. One of them is this piece that was written by Jeffrey Tucker in the Epoch Times. And I just want to let you guys know that as I go through this, if you're new to this idea of monetary sovereignty, Bitcoin, sound money, download my book, my Amazon best-selling book. You're going to see a QR code there. You can scan it. It's a free download. My way of saying thank you for tuning in. It'll give you a good primer. So let's dive into this, right? Let's dive into this article that Jeffrey Tucker wrote. In the last segment, we took a close look at Jeffrey Tucker's strongest argument that Bitcoin has essentially become a powerful tool for financial surveillance, and we saw why the base layer is architecturally transparent, why that was by design, and how the real path forward lies in building privacy-preserving layers on top of it rather than trying to force everything onto layer one. And, I want to address several of Tucker's other major claims directly, which is it's one of the central accusations that he made, which is Bitcoin is slow and has been twisted constantly in the opposite of what it was founded to be. He points to the block size debate roughly 10 years ago, and when some developers resisted expanding block size, which led to slower transactions and higher fees, he sees this as a betrayal of the original vision of a fast, usable peer-to-peer electronic cash system. We've been hearing these arguments for many years in the Bitcoin space. But here's the reality. The debate was not a hijacking. It was a legitimate, hard-fought argument about priorities. The people who wanted much larger blocks for cheap on-chain payments lost that argument in 2017. Then they created Bitcoin Cash as a result. And the market, through price, hash rate, developer activity, and user adoption, overwhelmingly chose the version of Bitcoin that could be more decentralized. It prioritized security, like I said, decentralization, and a conservative base layer. That's the Bitcoin we have today. That wasn't a failure of the project. That was the project working as designed. Bitcoin's consensus rules are not controlled by any single group of developers. They are enforced by the entire network. And when a proposed change threatens the properties that make Bitcoin valuable, its soundness, its resistance to capture, its long-term predictability, the network has a way of kind of rejecting it, That's not twisting the vision, that's protecting the vision. And Tucker also argues that Bitcoin is too slow and too expensive to be useful money, and that's on the base layer alone, right? And he's right. He's right about that. But at least for, small everyday transactions, coffee, etc. But the critique is now several years out of date. We've been talking about these transactional debates for a long time. And the Lightning Network has already processed millions of transactions per day. It's that new layer on top of Bitcoin with near instant settlement and fees measured in fractions of a penny. It's not theoretical anymore. It's running, it's happening, it's growing. And the design philosophy here is the same one that built the internet. Keep the base layer simple, secure, and robust, and then build additional capability on higher layers. Expecting every coffee purchase to settle directly on the base layer was never the plan, and Satoshi himself understood that scaling would require additional solutions over time. Now let's talk about the claim that Bitcoin has failed as a store of value money, right? Over the past 15 years, Bitcoin has been one of the best performing assets in the world. And despite its volatility, the people who held through the crashes and bear markets and the obituaries, the constant obituaries, they've never been rewarded. I mean, the people who've held on have been rewarded, but the people who've doubted haven't. The pattern is not a bug. It's consistent with how hard money has always behaved when it's still in the process of being discovered and adopted. Gold didn't become a stable store of value overnight either. It took centuries of trial and error and competition. Bitcoin is still moving through this natural stage, these natural stages that every form of money goes through. At first, like I said, it's a collectible. Then it's a store of value. Then it's a medium of exchange. And then it's eventually a unit of account. And we are still early in that process. The fact that it wasn't completed, or that it hasn't completed every stage yet, is not evidence of its failure. It's evidence that it's something we're watching, monetary evolution happening in real time. I'm excited about that. But even without strong on-chain privacy right now, Bitcoin remains an extraordinarily powerful sovereign tool. If you can control your private keys, if you can memorize or secure a seed phrase, you can have complete sovereignty over your wealth, and you can move it across borders without asking permission from any government, any person, or bank. That capability alone is revolutionary, and it excites me, and it exists today. It doesn't require the base layer to be private in order for those things to be useful for that purpose, and it protects us from inflation over long periods of time. And perhaps most importantly, Bitcoin's monetary policy is set at the grassroots level through consensus. No government, no central bank, no committee can change the 21 million coin supply. The rule is enforced by the network itself in a world where every major currency is currently being debased through inflation. That feature has become more valuable, not less, okay? Tucker is correct, though, that Bitcoin has faced serious challenges, technical, regulatory, and cultural challenges. But those challenges have not destroyed it. They have made the network stronger, more battle-tested, and more anti-fragile. Every attack that didn't kill it left it more resilient. That's the opposite of a story of decline. And we're also seeing something that Tucker's piece doesn't fully account for: the beginning of serious institutional and even governmental adoption. Major companies and funds and nation states are now holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And looking further ahead, the rise of AI agents, autonomous economic actors, prefer Bitcoin and will vastly outnumber humans. And it is likely to create enormous demand for neutral, decentralized, censorship-resistant money. Bitcoin is the clearest candidate for that role, despite it not having its privacy right now. The developments are not signs that Bitcoin has failed or has fallen. They are signs that it is still in the early stages of becoming what is and what was always meant to be a global, sovereign, sound monetary network that no single authority can control, and something that we can audit and that we can trust. In the final segment, I want to step back and talk about what I believe is actually the most important achievement of Bitcoin so far, something that goes far beyond price charts or technical debates. It's something that Tucker himself touches on at the end of his piece, but draws a very different conclusion than something like, that I have, and which is perfectly fine. We're all entitled to our own opinions. We're all entitled to look at Bitcoin and view it in a way that maybe maybe we're short-sighted. Maybe we see the whole picture. Maybe we're super technical. Maybe we're well-versed in monetary policy. And I've watched Tucker on videos for many years. I've seen his writings. I like his ideas. He's an Austrian economic-minded thinker. He's a liberty thinker, a free thinker. And I'm not here to do this segment to dog him. I'm not trying to dog him personally. I just want to point out that I don't think the full story of Bitcoin has been fully written. I don't think that Bitcoin has failed just yet. Do I have concerns that I share some of the same concerns that Jeffrey has, but I think it's too early to call it for Bitcoin. Like I said, I think that Bitcoin is going through an evolution. It's going through a journey. And even though it may not be private right now, there are solutions that are being developed, second layer, third layer solutions that are going to enhance privacy. We look at the internet. The internet can be private in many ways, depending on how you use it. It's all in how you use the technology, and it's all in how we willingly develop solutions on top of the technology. And Bitcoin does have network effect. And if you want to learn more about monetary sovereignty, sound money, how it's related to our freedom, again, download my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. Scan that QR code. It's a free download. My way of saying thank you for watching this show. It'll prime you in some of these ideas. But like I said, all hope is not lost. Bitcoin is still growing. It's still developing. And, I like the idea that we have a system that we can audit, that we can trust it. Because if you look at the monetary policy, the money creation at the Federal Reserve, we can't audit it. And if you don't like Bitcoin, don't use it. Don't invest in it. Buy Monero. Buy Zcash. Buy something that is strictly focused on privacy. I'm not here saying that Bitcoin has to be the answer for everything. I'm saying it's a probable answer for a lot of things when it comes to monetary policy and good, sound money. But I'm not here saying it has to be. Let the free market compete. Let people develop. Let the market choose what is the best form of money. And let's see what kind of privacy features are developed on Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is still protecting us from inflation, in my opinion. I've held Bitcoin long time. And it has done quite well for me. It's been the best performing asset. And I think we're going to see another bull market. Price will go up. Adoption will continue to grow. We'll be right back after this break. I'll hit more on my points. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on Biz TV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the final round, final segment of the Money Block. We are watching on Biz TV, coast to coast, or maybe you're watching online. I want to welcome all you Bitcoin newbies, lovers, and experts. No matter where you're watching from, give us a like, subscribe, comment, be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think about today's topic. Been talking about this idea of, is Bitcoin dead? Is the original vision gone? Has it been co-opted, in essence? Responding to this article that Jeffrey Tucker wrote on the Epoch Times. But before I continue and move on, be sure to download my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. You can scan that QR code. It's a free gift, my way of saying thank you for watching, and it'll give you the primer and an idea about monetary sovereignty, where the world is going, and why freedom in money matters. But let's continue on about my, response to Jeffrey's article. You know, Jeffrey Tucker, like I said in the last segment, he makes some really good points, and I'm not dogging him on those points. And I want to give him credit for all that he brought to attention to in the article. He's not the first one to do it, however, but he's right that the base layer is transparent by design, and he's right that financial privacy has been compromised for anybody that is using Bitcoin in a naughty way. And if you're using regulated exchanges, if you've done KYC, he's right that no technology alone can deliver freedom without people willing to fight for it. Privacy is part of that fight, but I believe Tucker is jumping to some very early conclusions about Bitcoin and its potential for privacy. Yes, Bitcoin faces real challenges, especially around privacy and usability. And, old habits, they die hard. And expecting a brand new technology to solve everything perfectly from day one has always been unrealistic. The journey doesn't stop here. It keeps going. We still have a lot of work to do in the Bitcoin space and how Bitcoin develops. It's still early in the adoption. It was inevitable that governments, institutions would get involved. And once Bitcoin reaches a certain level of success, a lot of us are thinking, okay, is Bitcoin being co-opted? But this was always going to happen. It was going to be adopted at scale. Institutions and governments were going to get involved in it. They would try to centralize as much of it as possible. They're going to try to get you to use ETFs, right? But despite all of that, Bitcoin has achieved something remarkable that Tucker underplays, and it has created the first form of money in history whose monetary policy is set by the people, not by governments. No central bank can print more of it. No politician can debase it through inflation. The grassroots approach of monetary policy alone makes it incredibly valuable as a sovereign wealth transfer tool. Nobody can stop me from making a transaction, right? And we may not get another opportunity in history to have the same kind of network effect, immaculate conception that Bitcoin has witnessed. A monetary network born completely outside of the control of any government or corporation. That's why I do this show to begin with, to talk about these kind of things, to enlighten people. I do the Money Block because we are living in a moment where we still have this choice. We have a fork in the road. We can choose freedom, or we can choose to build and support tools of freedom like Bitcoin. But what this requires us to keep pushing, to be intentional. The culture, we need to push the culture in the direction of liberty. And this idea, we better build privacy solutions. We need to build upon what Bitcoin has established. But Bitcoin is not perfect. It is not finished in any means, but it is real. And it is reignited this global conversation about sound money and technical financial sovereignty at this exact moment that we needed it the most. The outcome isn't predetermined. It depends on what we do next. I mean, again, like I said, Jeffrey brings up some great points. And just because Bitcoin doesn't have the perfect privacy at the moment doesn't negate this idea that I can have information in my head, go to any jurisdiction and move millions, if not billions of money of value across borders without anybody ever stopping me, right? That's revolutionary. The 21 million cap supply, as it grows in adoption, this is the scarcest asset on earth. And it creates digital scarcity, the first time we've ever seen digital scarcity. And, I've done quite well. Anybody who typically holds Bitcoin longer than 4 or 5 years has not lost money. They've outperformed inflation in the long run. And, Bitcoin is in an evolutionary phase. Like I said in the beginning, Bitcoin is going through the collectible phase, the store value phase, which we've entered in not too long ago. Then it's going to become the medium of exchange. Then it's going to be a unit of account or the true measure of wealth. Bitcoin's story is not done. It's not done being written. And, I'm going to continue to fight. I'm going to continue to fight for Bitcoin's adoption and growth, and that we have these second and third layer solutions, which are currently being built, and people are currently using them to enhance the scalability, the privacy of Bitcoin. And by all means, if you don't like the fact that Bitcoin is not private, because if you're a criminal using Bitcoin, you're stupid. And like I said in the earlier segments, we need a system that we can trust. We need a system that we can audit. The Federal Reserve, the dollar system, we can't really audit it. But now we have a system that can be trusted. And tools like Monero, Zcash, other privacy centralized, or not centralized, but other privacy focused coins are tools that we can use, that we can have in our toolbox. And like, I'm a proponent of having gold, silver, cash, Bitcoin, Monero, however you want to look at it, have multiple tools in your toolbox and use them when they're needed and when they are necessary. The fight's not over. Bitcoin is still growing. It's still evolving, and we have choices. I'm not here saying, hey, government, make Bitcoin constitutional money. I'm not even telling you to buy Bitcoin. I'm just saying, here are some ideas that have grown legs. There's a giant network effect. It brings me hope. Let's continue to develop that. Bitcoin's final story has not been solidified yet. It is not, the writing on the wall has not dried yet. We're still building. We're still growing. We're still seeing adoption. And, Gresham's Law is also a part of that. People are going to hoard Bitcoin instead of using it on a transactional basis, so long as we have things like stable coins and dollars. But we have options. We have choice. And I want the free market to decide what is the best form of money. And Bitcoin's going through that journey. Like I said, if you want to learn more about this, about sound money, free markets, liberty, how monetary sovereignty fits in all this, scan that QR code, download my book, Foundations for Liberty. It'll give you these ideas. It'll prime you, go more in detail than what we've been able to do here today. And like I said, my response to Jeffrey Tucker's article, I'm not dogging him. I like the way he thinks, but I think the jury is still out on Bitcoin. And we need to be intentional, and we need to let people know why it's important to choose tools of freedom, layers of freedom, and encourage the development of Bitcoin. Encourage being your own custodian, being your own bank. These ideas are not completely lost. Let's keep fighting and have multiple options. I'm here to just tell you that it's not over. And I think Jeffrey Tucker, as much as I love him, he's drawn to some early conclusions. But guys, thank you for tuning in. That's all the time we have for today. We'll see you same time, same place. Adios.
The opinions and suggestions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. This program is a product of More Media, LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, More Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, More Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.